BCN's new series, What's Happening Now, a collection of informational and hopefully entertaining programs where we substantively speak to interesting and important people. Today, we have Beaufort County Election Supervisor Kellie Hopkins. We're going to first talk about no excuse voting, which is coming up any day now. This is a preface to an episode of What's Happening Now, where my guest was Kellie Hopkins, Director of Beaufort County's Board of Elections. During that episode, we spoke about the upcoming election. We spoke about other issues like the absentee balloting, the possibility of ballot harvesting, and how that could be rendered ineffective by the new election law passed on June 12th, House Bill 1169. Well, things have changed in 24 hours. We met on the 22nd of September. On the 23rd of September, a settlement was reached between the State Board of Elections and the North Carolina Alliance for Retired People, a lobbyist group with a Washington, D.C. address. Probably has very little to do with North Carolina, but a lot to do with democratic socialist politics. As you all know, this is a crazy election year. It's a year where there's a group out there that wants to put as many ballots as they can in the hands of as many people as possible. Hopefully they'll be registered voters, but I fear that many will not. To that end, I wrote a resolution for the Beaufort County Board of Commissioners to look at, hopefully will pass, and we can send it to all 100 counties. Without any delay, I will read that resolution now. It is entitled, Resolution in Defense of the Representative Imperative of North Carolina General Assembly to enact election law by general statute for the people of North Carolina, and that law be sacrosanct. Whereas the North Carolina General Assembly enacted election law on June 12, 2020, House Bill 1169, which was signed into law by Governor Cooper to specifically address a revised absentee ballot process in North Carolina, allowing one witness rather than two, among other revised considerations. And whereas the State Board of Elections, SBE, under the control of the Democratic Socialist Party of North Carolina, did negotiate with State's Attorney General Josh Stein, also a Democratic Socialist, to settle a lawsuit brought by an activist Democratic Socialist lawyer representing the North Carolina Alliance for Retired Americans, a Democratic Socialist lobbyist group organized with a Washington, D.C. address, to enjoin all into a corrupt governing practice known as sue settle, which I'll describe in just a moment, which destroyed the intent of House Bill 1169, thus making the potential for election fraud far easier to effect. And whereas the Republican members of the 5-member SBE board have resigned in protest, arguing that they were deceived into agreement of that settlement by the North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein. And whereas furthermore, it is a dubious and specious argument that North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein would advise a settlement between the North Carolina State Board of Elections and this Democratic Socialist lobbyist group in a lower court, while the North Carolina General Assembly was conveniently adjourned, thus out of session into the 2021 long session, whence the North Carolina Attorney General could have engaged the North Carolina Constitution, the recently legislated House Bill 1169 regarding absentee ballots, the United States Constitution, and all manner of federal election law in his defendant's arsenal to defend the sanctity of the civil right that the vote of every North Carolina registered voter shall and must fully count. And whereas the North Carolina General Assembly, as specified by the NC Constitution, cannot be called back into session to defend North Carolina's election law, since North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein will not, unless North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper, also a Democratic Socialist, does indeed call North Carolina's legislative branch back into session, which he has to date not done. And whereas, since time is of the essence in this corrupt matter, With voting already in process before this infamous settlement was struck, honest politicians must move with all haste to act in North Carolina's defense to preserve the precious voting rights guaranteed by the North Carolina Constitution and the Constitution of these United States of all North Carolina registered voters. Therefore, be it resolved that Beaufort County's commissioners respectfully request that the North Carolina Board of Elections negate their infamous settlement with any and all special interest groups by the end of business October 9, 2020, with NC Attorney General Josh Stein committing to a new policy of protecting and defending the North Carolina General Statute regarding North Carolina's elections, and thereby representing those citizens of the state that pay his salary and bear the cost of his department. And be it further resolved, should the NCSBE and the state's Attorney General not void that aforementioned infamous settlement, Beaufort County Commissioners will enter into an injunctive lawsuit as plaintiff on behalf of Beaufort County citizens who shall demand a constitutional election pursuant to North Carolina general statutes guaranteed by the constitutions of North Carolina and the United States, or join any other ongoing injunctive lawsuit, be it state or federal, filed ahead of what Beaufort County could file, and be it even further resolved that while Beaufort County Commissioners represent all of Beaufort County's registered voters, this governing body will welcome the assistance of any or all of North Carolina's 100 counties as they may wish to better represent their respective electorates in support of the people's right that all votes are sacred and must be counted as legislated by North Carolina General Statute. This is important. There's two ways we can vote in North Carolina. One way is set by our North Carolina Constitution. The other way is by general statute as legislated by the General Assembly. We had a perfectly good law, and all of a sudden, a small lawsuit from a nondescript entity was entered into in a lower court, and our North Carolina Attorney General advised the State Board of Elections to settle when he had the state of North Carolina law and the Constitution of North Carolina and the Constitution of the United States on his side. Sounds like to me he just wanted to effect a different way of voting without going through the General Assembly, which was out of session and was not going to be called back into session until 2021 long session. That's about 6 months from now. The election would have been long over. Well, things have changed again since I wrote this resolution. Just in the last few hours, the North Carolina legislature cannot meet, and therefore they cannot, as a group, as a body, join in a lawsuit, an injunctive lawsuit, to stop this settlement from ever seeing the light of day. What has happened is that North Carolina Senator Pro Tem Phil Berger and Speaker of the North Carolina House Tim Moore have joined in a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit, not a state lawsuit. They're leaving the state courts of North Carolina, which obviously they feel cannot be trusted. And they've gone into a federal court, and they have enjoined into an injunctive lawsuit as plaintiffs to stop this settlement. So, hopefully that'll happen. Then maybe we'll find some normalcy here in North Carolina. Earlier I had mentioned sue settle. Let me explain that. Sue settle is a process where a favorable lawsuit has been filed against your governing body. Let's say here in North Carolina, it's filed against the State Board of Elections. And the lawsuit charges that there are infractions that the person who is supposed to be defending North Carolina General Statute, Josh Stein, the Attorney General, thinks that that lawsuit is maybe a good for the people of North Carolina, even though it is in direct conflict with the general statutes. And those general statutes are the general statutes in which we organize and run our elections. So what does he do? he advises the State Board of Election through the great auspices of his office to settle, when actually he had all the tools he needed to file an appeal if necessary. If he couldn't beat it in court, file an appeal and keep it in court until the next election, and then it could be remedied. What he got was a process where we would no longer elect our representatives in North Carolina and that on the federal level, like the President of the United States, in a manner that is normal, what we're used to. And by that, I'm talking about the absentee ballot process. Well, I could talk about this further and further, but it is a complicated issue. And there is a very, very simple remedy to this complicated issue. The remedy to this issue is just follow the law. The law is in place. I will ask the Beaufort County Commissioners to do what they can to effect such. And I am thankful that Senator Phil Berger, who is President of the Senate, and Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, have filed an injunctive lawsuit in federal court. Now, stick around. Kellie and I are going to have a long discussion about many matters of election law in North Carolina that for this time period where we're in right now is completely obsolete. Can you tell us when it's going to begin and what's it going to be like?
In person, one-stop absentee will start on October 15th. This particular election, we've got 4 sites for one-stop. Our office, of course, will be open. Then we're also opening up the Chocowinity Fire Department full-time. Your hours from Monday through Friday are 8 to 7:30, and then Saturdays from 9 to 7. We also have 2 satellite sites working a altered schedule. We'll start them on Saturday the 24th, and that's Belhaven and Aurora. So the Saturday, same time, will be 9 to 7, and then during that last week, Belhaven and Aurora will also be open from 8 to 7:30. And then that last Saturday, which is Halloween, will be open from 8 to 3 at all 4 sites.
Is this similar to the same schedule in the last election cycle?
Each schedule changes because of the type of election we have. We look at how much we need to offer. Presidential elections by far have the highest turnout. Plus with COVID and people wanting to kind of spread out the voting, we felt like 4 sites were needed. And of course the hours, we try to get people after work and so forth. So
for those people who wish to vote in person, and I suggest that for everyone, if at all possible. If you go to the grocery store, you can vote in person. For all those folks that want to vote in person, what kind of PPE are you going to be using and giving?
Our staff, which would be the people checking in voters, will be required to wear a mask, a face shield. We also have the sneeze guards in front of each check-in station, and we'll have gloves. So our staff will have that. Voters, if they don't have a mask, we will have some available for them, but it is not a requirement that they actually wear it. We cannot make voters wear a mask. So but there's more. We're looking into different ways to kind of, we're spreading out the voting booths so that there's more social distancing. Mm-hmm. We're actually moving the one stop at our office to a back room, so we'll have plenty of room to have a hallway where people can spread out, and if it's raining, it won't get their hair wet or clothes wet or whatever.
So you won't be using the front room anymore?
We're not going to be using the front room. We're going to move back to the conference room in the middle of our building, but you'll still come in our doorway, and we'll
You guys do have a lot of space.
Yeah, we do. That building does. I can always use more. I wish we were in our own building. That would be great. But we're also giving voters their own individual pin. So once somebody has a pin, they can take it with them. They'll be single-use pins. And we're constantly looking at ways to try and protect voters and, of course, our poll workers that'll be sitting there all day.
The main, no excuse, one-stop voting facility, your site. Mm-hmm. When you walk in the front door, you'll have the space where Josh sits. And then over to the right, will you have the sign in where they will give you the absentee ballot and you will certify that you are who you say you are?
Not from right there. You're going to come into our office and then turn into a door and go down a hallway and enter our training room. So
everything's going to be back in the conference room.
It's going to be back in the conference room. So the check-in station, it's a much larger room. And we also have doors at each side of the room. So you're going to come into one, check in. We'll have plenty of room to have spaced out voting booths, and then you will exit the other side and then walk back out a different direction. So there's no cross traffic there.
Okay, very well. And if it's really busy, then what you might do is call and allow people to leave the front room to go back.
Well,
possibly?
the line would be in our front room. We could always snake a line if we needed to in our front room, but the hall's fairly long.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about having a tent outside of the office and then having people wait out there, but we figured having them inside, it would be better if there were bad weather or something like that.
You've got high ceilings.
Yes.
Probably 14 feet or so.
And in the front room, yes.
Yeah,
in the conference room, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah, but it is a much bigger room.
All these dimensions make a difference right now.
It does.
We got 10-foot ceilings here, so we're kind of cool.
Yep.
Don't start hacking on me.
I won't.
I'll have to throw you out of here.
I won't.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, we're looking at
kind of an inside joke.
Yep. We're looking at different ways to make sure that that people are able to come in and not fear a contact in any way. And we have plans that if we have contacts or one of our sites becomes contaminated, we would shut that site down and refer people to other sites and have that cleaned. And we'll be cleaning daily in our office.
You getting any absentee ballots back yet?
Yes. We started a couple weeks ago. I think the requests are over 1,000 now, and I want to say we've got 500 or so back, 500 to 600 back already voted. So we've got voters in Beaufort County that have done the deed. They have voted and turned it back in. I have no idea. The envelopes haven't been even opened.
How many times have you been asked that?
A ton of times. And we will start processing them. The first absentee meeting is September 29th. And in North Carolina, which makes us, not completely unique, I'm sure some states are like us, but it puts us ahead of the game with absentees. As you hear so many people talk about, they're worried they won't get the results for a very long time.
Yes.
In some states, what happens is they don't open them until Election Day, and then they're not able to count them all because of the large quantity of them. In North Carolina, we are allowed to pre-process absentees. Starting September 29th, we'll have our first absentee meeting where the board will actually approve them, check behind us, make sure that all the elements are there to count them, and then we'll open them, insert them into a tabulator, but not tabulate them. So we're able every week to catch up. So on Election Day, all we do is turn the key and release the results. So in Beaufort County, and I'm thinking most of North Carolina, we're going to have it on time because we're able to do that.
Absentee ballots need to be counted by Election Day? That's a question.
Here's the thing. If you want your ballot counted in the election night totals, you have to get it back to our office by 5 o'clock the day before the election. So all of those ballots that come in 5 o'clock the day before, those will be released on election night. A voter can continue to drop off a ballot at our office or mail it on Election Day to 5 o'clock or postmarked. Then we have to receive it by the Friday after the election with a postmark of Election Day for us to count it. Usually there's not too many of those. And this year we're kind of pressing people. So there's been issues and people are a little unsure about the post office and delivery dates and stuff like that. So we're asking people to get them in as soon as they can, not to push it off till the end.
So there's a 3-day rule.
Yep, 3-day rule.
And come Monday, you're out. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you vote for. They're not getting that vote.
Yep. If we get it the Monday after the election, it can't count because even if it was postmarked by Election Day, the cutoff day is Friday. So those will be added to the overall totals.
No exceptions?
No exceptions.
And that's all over North Carolina?
That's all over North Carolina.
Outstanding.
So that's one of the reasons, or the public's not really aware of it when they worry about fraud in absentee balloting. That 5 o'clock deadline on Monday is very crucial because we don't accept into our system any more absentees. At 5 o'clock, we make sure all the absentees are in. Then we upload that data to all of the laptops that go to the precincts, and the chief judges and all come in to pick those up. So everybody that's voted absentee by mail or one stop, it's on that laptop. So if they come in and they look them up, it's going to tell them that they already voted. So that right there is when we stop accepting them, and then we don't accept anymore because the day after the election, we download the laptops, and then we get the voter history from election day. So if a person were to just hypothetically mail their ballot on election day and get that postmark, but then go to the polls and vote because we don't have the ballot yet and it comes in on Friday, we will already know in the computer system that person voted on election day, and it will not allow that second ballot to be.
Negate it.
Yep.
And you've got a data response facility on your computer.
Yeah, we flip. That Monday before, it flips from absentee to in person. And getting all that information so quickly, we're able to find out if somebody's double voted or tried to vote twice.
I'd like to state one thing for the public. North Carolina is absentee balloting. It has changed. It only requires one signature now, but it has to be a signature, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And it cannot be an X like it could be in the past. And it must be witnessed. Am I right?
Yes. The voter must sign.
He must sign.
The voter must sign it, and then
it must be his signature as close as possible.
And then a one witness has to sign, print their name, and provide their address for us.
Okay. And both are liable.
Yes.
For any shenanigans.
Yeah.
And I believe it is a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that will preclude any mass ballot harvesting here in North Carolina. We shouldn't have that. That doesn't mean it won't happen. But we should have a safe and fair election in North Carolina. And I do express to everyone, vote in person if you get a chance. Mm-hmm. That way you know your vote is going to count.
Yep.
We're going to take a break, and we will be back shortly. When we left, we were talking about North Carolina's absentee balloting and that initiative and how it affects Beaufort County. We are not doing universal mass mailing in North Carolina, but there was a problem recently in Mecklenburg County. Did you hear anything about that?
Yes, sure did. I think a lot of people heard about it. I think people are actually looking for problems with absentees. But it from what I'm understanding, is that some voters received more than one ballot. Now, it was an administrative error.
It was administrative error.
It was an administrative error.
Were these absentee ballots actually requested?
Yes, they were. They have to be requested to go out.
Okay.
So once we get a valid request in, then we enter it into the computer. And what happens is we print out labels. There's 4 labels per voter, and they come out in sheets. And then we put them together. There's a outgoing label, like to the voter. Then there's an incoming label to us on the absentee envelope. Then there's the label with the voter's information and ballot number that we put together in a packet. Apparently, and this is what I'm hearing or reading, I haven't had a chance to talk to Michael Dickerson, who's the director in Mecklenburg, and he's great, is that they couldn't find a set of labels So they reprinted them and sent them out, and then realized they had sent it twice. And I did read one of his quotes that it was more of an embarrassment than it was a problem, because we have those traceable ballots. So if they were to send 2 in, it would be easy to see that they would only have 1 count.
You're talking about this traceable balloting now. This is new in North Carolina.
No, it's always been that way.
It's always been there. Well, how did that ballot harvesting happen down in Bladen County and those counties down in there, Columbus, and during the 9th district?
That wasn't so much the process that we have. This was an operative that was going to voters. He would go around, collect absentee request forms. He'd bring you on. Don't you want to vote absentee? Here, sign this. I'll take it to the Board of Elections. We have to log how many of those come in. So we saw his name, or that county saw his name, and he'd bring in hundreds at a time. Then, or maybe not hundreds, but a good amount. Then he would know that the ballots were getting sent out. So then he'd go back to the voters and say, look, you need some help, filling out your ballot. And apparently some of the people were just giving it to him and just saying, here. Some of them had already marked them, but needed a witness. And if they knew it was a Democrat ballot, they'd throw it in the trash. So some of them were never delivered. And some of them were,
that's where the big kerfuffle was.
Well, exactly. That's how that was. He was working the voters in absentee ballots. Since then, and seeing how that happened, the legislature has made some changes to how to keep that from happening again. Now, anybody who requests an absentee ballot, it has to be by the voter or the voter's near relative. That's always been the case. But who brings that back to our office has to be the voter or voter's near relative. So an operative is no longer able to collect absentee requests and bring them to our office. So that's one way.
What if he did it by mail?
If he did it by mail, it would still, he'd have to do each one singly. There would be no way he could do several of them. So,
and we're using the masculine pronoun because it was a man.
It was a man. I'm sorry. But, and another thing is data was not confidential about who had requested an absentee. So that had always been for public view to see who had requested it. So he knew who was getting a ballot. So he'd go to those areas and so forth. So now that information that a voter has requested one is now confidential until Election Day. So now it's not public record who's actually gotten a ballot. So they've done that, and they're tightening it up. That's why they wanted to keep the witness on there. And also ballots being returned cannot be returned by anybody but the voter or the voter's near relative. So they made the penalty a little bit higher.
The witness is so essential, and the penalty is so essential.
Yes.
For making sure that people do what they say they're going to do, because is your guy winning the election worth you going to jail?
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself that. Probably not. One vote. Some people won't even vote because they think their vote doesn't count.
Yeah, and we've heard a lot on the news too about ballots not being counted, or that is, and I think we've got probably 50 of them that we have received not okay. They're either missing a signature or they're missing a witness.
You go back to them and say, hey, you want to try this again?
We used to cancel it and send them another and tell them what the deficiencies were. This year, we're going to try to do some things to fix or cure the absentee is what the word is to cure it. If the witness is on there, but the voter failed to sign, we can call the voter, have them come in and sign an affidavit that was their ballot. Which defeats the
whole purpose of them doing absentee to begin with.
Yes. But that's their fault. But it fixes the ballot.
Fixes the ballot.
What cannot be cured is a witness. If one comes in and they don't have a witness on it, then they have to start all over again.
Yeah.
Because we can't have it, and then we know they've been separated, that witness wasn't.
Besides the states that do universal mass mailing, which is you and I both believe is wrong. Are there any states that do absentee balloting without a witness? I mean, we're down to one witness in North Carolina, but it has to be a signature.
Yes. And I think, I don't think mass mailing, it would worry me. It would worry me in how to administer that.
Oh, there's so many problems that could arise.
Yeah, but
there's problems you haven't even thought of yet.
Colorado have been doing it for years, so I'm sure they're more familiar with that process when I'm not. Does that make sense?
Well, Utah does it as well.
Yeah, there's five states that do that.
Yeah, and of all the other states are basically blue states.
Yep.
Utah isn't, and I'm wondering what's your problem?
Was it Oregon, Utah,
California,
Colorado, Hawaii,
New Jersey, and New York now?
Now, some of them have started this year trying to make changes due to COVID. And also, there's been quite a fight about absentee ballot requests, whether states can automatically send requests out. And we have gotten a lot of calls about that. They'll say, I got a ballot in the mail. And we're like, no, to get a ballot in the mail, that was an absentee request form. So, and they're coming from different political groups.
I'm going to restate this one more time. If you go to the grocery store, you can go and vote one-stop, absentee, in-person voting.
Yep.
It's not difficult. There's facilities all over Beaufort County, and probably what other county that where you live. There are many locations where you can vote, and you can get it right. They'll make sure you get it right, and your vote will count.
Yeah, we do. If anything needs to be changed, like an address, or you've gotten married and need to change your name, we would encourage people to come into our office during one stop, and they can vote and get that done. Because right there we have all the ballot styles. We can do it quickly, where if you go on election day, then you have to stop and you have to fill out a registration form. And it's a lot quicker if you have any changes to do it during one stop, for sure.
And I don't know what it's like in whatever county you may be residing in when you view this. But I will tell you, in Beaufort County, during one stop, there's hardly ever a line.
We move them through there.
They move through real fast. You have like 3 workers working
Sometimes
there?
4.
Sometimes 4.
And we've had, one election, we were processing them faster than we could get them through the booths. We didn't have enough booths. Because especially like this election, this ballot is very long. It's 2-sided. It's going to take voters a little bit of time to finish that. So we'll have extra booths up this time. But I think we could process a voter in about a minute and a half.
Now, here's a question that you probably weren't expecting. Do you think the politicians will be out there trying to persuade the voters as a political wall before they can get down there? I'm wondering, this here in the age of COVID, will they be there?
I have been thinking about that myself, wondering if they're going to continue to pass information.
No, I don't think that's a good idea.
Or shake hands and kiss babies as they used to.
I can see constitutionally how you cannot restrict them from doing that.
They can try.
They can, it would be difficult from a national constitution and even a state constitutional manner. But the whole idea of it just doesn't make sense. In fact, it may be viewed as an encumbrance.
Yeah.
And a hindrance. And I'm going to say this to all politicians out there. And I am a politician. I will stand out there and talk to people. I wouldn't do it right now. I would advise you not to. Do all your campaigning before it's time to stand out there and ask them one last time for that vote. Do it now. When I go to the grocery store, I don't know how you are, but when I go to the grocery store, I wear my mask. I know where I'm going. I'm in and out. And you
had a plan.
I had a plan. And listen, this is kind of cool.
You need an election plan.
You need an election plan. I was talking to the health director yesterday, and that'll be a show coming up on what's happening now. One of my questions is, what happens if you walk by somebody who doesn't have a mask and you don't have a mask on? What if you were to hold your breath? You see them coming. You hold your breath for 20, 30 feet. And then after they pass, you hold your breath for 20, 30 feet. And he said, that's probably a good idea, because you're inhaling droplets. If you're not inhaling anything, you're probably not going to get that droplet that will infect you. Now, you can touch where they've had a droplet, but if you don't touch anything, you're probably
and as
cool
long
too.
as you don't do that to your eyes.
Do that to your eyes or face. So close contact is not a good thing right now.
No.
I mean, and the only way we're going to break this COVID plague is to talk to people 7 feet away, but we won't touch, and we're not going to.
And I'm in a bubble because I am so scared that I'm going to come down with it around the election and can't be in the office. I mean, that I cannot be sick the next 6 weeks. So I'm being super cautious.
I'm just like you.
Because I don't know. I could not leave my staff a whole presidential election in their lap while I quarantine somewhere.
I feel like, I don't want to die. I'm 65. I'm in good shape for a guy my age. But the thing is, I don't have time to even be sick.
Yeah, I don't either.
I can't afford 10 days out.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We're not going to argue about the mortality rates or anything like that. I cannot be. And if one of my kids comes down with it, policy for this county is for me to quarantine.
14 days.
And so I wouldn't even be sick. I cannot be out of the office the next 6 weeks. I cannot. So I am being very, very careful about those things.
Kellie has been doing this for over 20 years. How many years now?
22.
22 years. I remember when you came on, I was a commissioner then.
You were?
And she is what we call essential personnel. Anything else, Kellie?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything today.
I'm going to need you to come back at some point.
Of course. And every time I tell you, I'd love to be here.
And she's always on time. Thank you. And we hope to see you again next time.